Well, the figures, the historical figures, we've talked about a little. It's interesting that those great foxes who ruled Europe for centuries, Richelieu to Adenauer, if you like, it's a figure that really doesn't exist in the United States, does it?
That's right.
There have been great leaders in the United States, but not that kind of supple mind, I suppose, that is shaped by centuries of history.
Well, and also we never had the problems of Europeans. Europeans lived with rather narrow margins of safety. No British statesman could afford to say, let the continent fall under the domination of a major power, and we will then see whether it has goodwill towards us. Because if it turned out that it didn't have goodwill towards Britain, it would be too late for Britain to react. So British policy through centuries was to prevent the continent from being dominated by a major power, regardless of what Britain thought of its domestic structure. Americans have had a much wider margin of safety. They could let events happen. And so Americans find it very hard to believe, to live in a world which is neither peace nor war, in which there is every problem you solve is an admission prize for some other difficulty. And this sense of continuity, this sense of ambiguity, where the Soviet Union is both adversary and negotiating partner, goes down very hard. And the liberals and conservatives are both united in the proposition that there must be a terminal point. The liberals believing that goodwill supplies its remedy. The conservatives arguing that if only the trumpet is clear enough, the walls of Jericho will collapse automatically. And you're quite right. It's this sense of complexity that Europeans have doesn't exist in America. It's
a kind of, I don't use the word pejoratively, though it can be, it's a kind of innocence, isn't it?
It's a kind of good innocence, because it also leads to great efforts. It's every problem being believed to be soluble.
But then it must lead to repeated disappointment.
It leads to repeated disappointments. And I believe that in the next 20 years or so, we will be driven to a more European approach to foreign policy, simply because we are no longer so predominant in the world that we can wait for lack of ambiguity. We must now act in complex situations, and therefore in a relativistic way.